Welcome and thank you for joining Research Nova Scotia's information session for the International Nursing Research Program Competition, otherwise referred to as the INRP. My name is Megan Bellefontaine, my pronouns are she, her, and I am the Director of Research Support for Research Nova Scotia, and I will be your host for today's event. Before we start this afternoon, I just want to begin by acknowledging that Research Nova Scotia is in Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. This land is governed by the treaties of peace and friendship that were struck in 1725-26 and that have established a long-standing relationship between the nations. We are all treaty people. I also want to recognize that the people of African descent who have lived and contributed to Nova Scotia have been here for more than 400 years. So today's webinar, we will cover a variety of topics, including a brief introduction to Research Nova Scotia, an overview of the INRP, the application process, the review and evaluation process, and finally, if we have a bit of time left over, a short Q&A session. Research Nova Scotia was founded in 2019 to support, organize, and coordinate research in our province. Our research strategy has been organized into 4 areas: improved quality of life for Nova Scotians, healthy people and healthcare systems, climate change adaptation and resilience, and sustainable bioeconomy. These areas represent some of the most pressing needs of the province. Each area is made up of 4 corresponding missions, which help to give shape to the ways research can contribute to achieving progress for Nova Scotia. This mission-oriented approach to research means that we start with what we want to accomplish and build a research agenda and coalition of partners and projects to help achieve these goals. We seek to support creativity, diversity, and ingenuity in the research community's responses to our mission challenges. Recent work to connect local researchers with those at universities in India and the Philippines, with which agreements have been signed regarding the training of medical professionals, has created opportunities for bilateral research projects. Faculty of Health researchers at Dalhousie and researchers in the Rankin School of Nursing at St. FX universities are interested in engaging with their counterparts at these institutions in these 2 countries on projects that reflect priorities for Nova Scotia and its international partners. That is, healthcare equity and health system transformation. These small grants will support research projects that aim to provide potential benefits for all collaborators, but are consistent with Nova Scotia's health priorities and Research Nova Scotia's mission-oriented strategy. These awards may be up to $30,000 for 2 years of funding. All proposals must adhere to the Research Nova Scotia definition of research. For Research Nova Scotia, research is defined as creative and systematic work undertaken in order to increase the stock of knowledge and to devise new applications of available knowledge. Research is novel in that it is aimed at new findings, creative, that it is based on original, not obvious concepts and hypotheses, is uncertain about the final outcome, including uncertainty about whether the objectives can be achieved to any degree at all. It is systematic, and that is planned and budgeted, and it's transferable and reproducible. The potential for the transfer of new knowledge, ensuring its use and allowing other researchers to reproduce the results. So there's some potential for application in new areas or contexts. This program will provide financial support to researchers who are undertaking this bilateral research project involving investigators from universities in Nova Scotia and investigators from universities in India and/or the Philippines to impact the delivery of healthcare in the province. As noted, only applicants from 2 organizations will be eligible to apply for this award, those from the Faculty of Health at Dalhousie and researchers in the Rankin School of Nursing at St. FX. We will now start to dive a little bit deeper into the eligibility criteria for this grant opportunity. To apply for an International Nursing Program Award, the primary applicant must meet the following criteria. First, they must be a researcher with an academic appointment at Dalhousie University or St. Francis Xavier University. For the purposes of the INRP, Research Nova Scotia determines that tenured, tenure track, probationary tenure track, and limited term appointments to be academic appointments. Applicants with limited term appointments are eligible to apply. However, if successful, they will be asked to provide institutional confirmation that their term end date is after the estimated grant completion date. Adjunct and instructor positions are not considered to be academic appointments for the purposes of this award. Second, the PA must have an appointment with the Rankin School of Nursing if based out of St. FX, or the Faculty of Health if at Dalhousie University. Third, they must be engaged in research in healthcare equity and/or health system transformation. And finally, they must reside and work in Nova Scotia for the full duration of the award. In addition to the eligibility criteria for the primary applicant, each proposal must also have an identified co-primary applicant from the participating international country on their team. Applicants must maintain this eligibility throughout the full duration of the award. To be considered eligible for the program, the chosen research topic must meet the following four criteria. First, the subject matter must be of relevance and value to nursing in Nova Scotia and the participating international country. Second, all submissions considered for funding must demonstrate alignment with the Healthy People and Healthcare Systems pillar of Research Nova Scotia's mission-oriented strategy, which uses research to support a healthy population and a strong healthcare system. Applications must clearly articulate how the project contributes to one or more of the following three Research Nova Scotia health missions: strengthen our healthcare delivery system, care for vulnerable populations, or prevent negative impact to health and well-being. Additional information on the Research Nova Scotia health missions identified here can be found on the Research Nova Scotia website. Third, the project must demonstrate existing connection to the potential beneficiaries of the project's outcome. And finally, all submissions must consider the province's Action for Health strategy. Action for Health is the first step in transforming health in Nova Scotia. While Action for Health is not a research agenda, applicants should connect their work to its goals.
Next, we'll take a quick look at the anticipated timeline for this award. The call for applications will open on November 28th, 2024, and we will host an information webinar to learn more about this program on December 11th, 2024, from 10:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Atlantic Time. During this information session, our COO, Marley McNeil, will provide an overview of the initiative, Research Nova Scotia's definition of research, and answer questions from the research community. All proposals must be submitted through Research Nova Scotia's Jura system by 1 p.m. Atlantic Time on Thursday, February 13th, 2025. Jura will not allow submissions that come in after this time, and any applications not submitted by this date and time will be marked as ineligible for consideration. We strongly recommend that you do not leave your submission to the last minute. Technical errors and computer shutdowns can and do occur at the worst possible moments, and exceptions will not be made under any circumstances. Finally, funding decisions are expected in April of 2025, and funding will be available to start shortly thereafter.
So now the big question is, how do you apply for the award? The first step is to confirm your eligibility criteria. Be sure to review the eligibility criteria mentioned earlier in this presentation to ensure that you are eligible for the award. Applicants who do not meet their eligibility criteria will be deemed ineligible and will not be able to move forward in the competition. The criteria can be found on the Research Nova Scotia website, in this slide deck, and embedded in the online application form. If there are any questions regarding eligibility, please contact our help desk at the email address found at the end of this presentation. Next, you must reach out to your institution to confirm any internal deadlines. All submissions must undergo institutional review and receive approval before they will be considered by Research Nova Scotia. Applicants must connect with their research office well in advance of the submission deadline to confirm any internal deadlines and processes. This process will be completed via an institutional representative in Jura once you submit your application. However, applicants should inform their institution of their intent to submit as early as possible. Next, you must register for a Jura account and complete your EDIA self-declaration. Jura is Research Nova Scotia's online grant management portal. All applications must be submitted through Jura. As a first step, you will navigate to Jura from the Research Nova Scotia website. You will select the For Researchers dropdown and click on Jura Login. Once you reach the Jura homepage, you may log in using existing system credentials if you applied for a previous award, or if you're new to the system, click the Register button to sign up. Once you're on the registration page, you will first need to look up your organization. It should be the organization at which you have your eligible appointment, either Dalhousie University or Santa Fe University. If you select the wrong organization at sign up, please reach out to our Jura help desk and we will be happy to resolve this issue. When entering the name of your organization, a drop-down box with all matching entries will appear. Be sure to select this entry from the pop-up box in order to properly associate your account with the organization. Next, you will complete the contact information section. Please note that all sections marked with an asterisk are required. Finally, you will complete an equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility self-declaration. EDIA strengthens the research community and the quality, social relevance, and impact of research. EDIA-informed analyses, systems, and practices ensure barriers faced by underrepresented or disadvantaged groups are identified and addressed, which in turn enhances the integrity of application and selection processes, strengthens research outputs, and increases the overall excellence of research. All information provided to Research Nova Scotia will be kept strictly confidential and will not be shared with third parties. If you do not wish to self-identify, you have the option to select Prefer Not to Say for each question. You must select one option and save your responses for your questionnaire to be marked as complete. Doing this fulfills the mandatory requirement for completing the EDIA self-declaration. You may change your answers to these questions at any time by following the instructions outlined in the How to Complete an EDIA Self-Declaration in Jura document found on the NIRP landing page on the Research Nova Scotia website. When all fields are complete, click the Submit button to create your account in Jura. Shortly after submitting, you will receive an automated email from Smart Simple with a link to set your password. Once your password is set, you will need to agree to the Jura privacy policy and terms of use and will be directed to your user homepage. As noted earlier in the presentation, EDIA self-declaration is required of all applicants. Users who have an existing Jura account will first need to log into the system with their existing credentials, then click on the personal profile link on their homepage, and then select the Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Accessibility tab. As with the previous option for new users, if you do not wish to self-identify, you have the option to select Prefer Not to Say for each question. So now that you've successfully registered for Jura and completed your EDIA self-declaration, you may now start working on your application. So from your Jura homepage, you will select the Funding Opportunities section. From here, select the International Nursing Research Program opportunity and click Apply Now to launch your application. Before you begin your application, you will need to click the Save Draft button. This will assign you a unique application number in the system and will allow you to return to your application at any time. Next, you will navigate to the various sections of the application using the tabs located at the top of your screen. All questions marked with an asterisk are mandatory. Jura will not automatically save your progress, so we do recommend that you save frequently in order to avoid losing your work and to enable you to return to working on your application at a later date. In any subsequent section, you can find your draft application in the In Progress Applications section of your Jura homepage. While working on your application, you must follow the guidelines for this opportunity. The detailed guidelines can be found on the Research Nova Scotia website on the International Nursing Research Program landing page. This document provides you with details on what is expected for each of the fields found in your Jura application. We strongly recommend that you take the time to read the guidelines thoroughly in order to set up your application for success. While you're completing the application, there are several areas where you may have some confusion, so we want to spend a few moments of today's webinar to review these details. First, we will look at the applicant organization. The applicant organization that displays on your Jura application is the organization that you selected when you registered for your Research Nova Scotia Jura account. If your organizational affiliation is incorrect on this application, please contact helpdesk@researchnovascotia.ca. Second, we'll review the plain language summary. The plain language summary should provide a clear and concise overview of the project written in language suitable for a non-scientific audience. I always recommend that people keep in mind that they're writing this for, say, their mother. I'm not sure what your family situation is, but my mom worked at a call center for her entire career and doesn't really understand high-level scientific concepts. So every time I'm writing something for a non-scientific audience, I always try to keep my mother in mind and ask myself whether or not she would understand what I'm talking about. So we ask that wherever possible, you avoid using jargon, abbreviations, and technical terms. If you must use them, please provide a clear explanation. This summary should briefly describe the activity for which you are requesting funding, the research area of interest, and the potential impact for Nova Scotia. If funded, Research Nova Scotia will use this plain language summary for communication purposes. The third, we'll review a few best practices for developing project objectives. To start thinking about how to develop your research objectives, you will first want to state the overall aim of your research. Your objectives should follow from that. They are the expected outcomes from your research as you pursue that aim. Most projects will have multiple outcomes, but we recommend that you are concise. More is not always better. Applicants should include as few objectives as necessary to allow Research Nova Scotia to understand what you want to accomplish. In addition to objectives stemming from the aim of the research, Research Nova Scotia also allows for objectives that demonstrate how the project will increase the researcher's capacity. For example, using specific methodological approach or using a piece of specialized equipment. While acceptable, these objectives should supplement the main research objectives rather than be the main focus. Remember, if successful, you will be asked to report your progress towards these objectives. Next, we'll review the definitions of an employment and training opportunity and review how these should be calculated. Employment created is the estimated number of jobs in Nova Scotia that will be supported by the funding awarded to this project. Training opportunities may be paid or unpaid opportunities for students and others in Nova Scotia to learn research skills and/or about specialized equipment and methods used on the research project. Only include the training opportunities that will be supported by the Research Nova Scotia funding awarded for this project. It is important to note that you may not include an opportunity under both training and employment. Research Nova Scotia is interested in the estimated number of jobs supported directly by this award and the number of training opportunities it will create over the full duration of the project. To calculate the number of employment or training opportunities, you will need to divide an employee's scheduled work hours per week by the employer's hours as a full-time work week. As an example, let's assume you'll be hiring one research assistant to work 30 hours a week for the full 2-year duration of the project. We would perform the calculation by taking the number of hours the RA will work in a given week, dividing it by the number of hours in a full-time work week. So we're going to assume that that's 40 at this particular institution. We'll multiply that by the number of workers, and finally multiply that by the number of years the employee will be working on the grant. This will give us a total of 1.5 FTE, and that's what you would enter into the field in Jura. So next, we will briefly review the budget justification upload. First, we'll review a few of the policies related to all Research Nova Scotia funding. All Research Nova Scotia funds must be used effectively, efficiently, and ethically. To be eligible, the expense must be essential for the purpose for which the funds were awarded and used only in accordance with the ethical, financial, and equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility policies and practices of the administering organization. Research Nova Scotia will only fund research and expenses related to that research, which are consistent with its legislation and regulations. All expenses must adhere to the Research Nova Scotia policy on eligible expenses. This policy can be found on the Research Nova Scotia website. Travel that is essential for the research project is an eligible cost. Travel and related expenditures must be at the most economical rates deemed to be reasonable, as based on the administering organization's policy. Costs associated with entertainment, alcohol, or cannabis are not eligible. The portion of the budget allocated to travel must not exceed 30% of the total budget for this project. And finally, all projects are subject to a financial holdback of 10%. Applicants must upload a budget justification that includes additional details of the expenses outlined in the budget table. Reviewers carefully look over these budgets, and only expenses that are eligible and deemed necessary for the proposed project will be approved. If any proposed project activities are dependent on other sources of funding, this contingency should be clearly identified, and its impact on the execution of the project should be addressed. The first page of your budget justification must include a year-by-year breakdown of your grant expenses. For example, if you're applying for a 2-year grant, you would insert a breakdown something like is shown. It's important to note that the number in the total column here must match the amount entered in the corresponding budget item in the budget table. The second page of your budget justification document must include details of your expenses as appropriate. So also, you please refer to the table provided in the guidelines for examples of common expenses that may be included in your proposal, as well as the justification required for each category. Next, we'll briefly touch on team members and partners. A partner is an organization or an individual who contributes expertise, data, funding, infrastructure, etc. to the research project. They must have an interest in and make a contribution to the proposed project. A team member is an active member of the research project and may take the role of a co-principal investigator, a co-investigator, an associate, mentor, partner, or collaborator, or another type of team member that makes sense based on your project. So based on these definitions, a partner will always be considered a team member, but a team member will not always be the definition of a partner. Detailed definitions for each of the team member types listed here are available in the program guidelines. Finally, we'll talk a little bit about CV uploads. The primary applicant must upload an up-to-date PDF version of a CV or resume for both of the primary applicants. That will be the Nova Scotia-based PA and the co-PA from the participating international country. In addition, a CV or resume is required for any team members who are in the roles of co-investigator, associate, mentor, or collaborator. All uploads must be in PDF format. And it is important to note that while partners are not required to submit a CV, it is strongly recommended that they submit a letter of support detailing their interest in and contribution to the proposed project. So once your application is complete and ready for submission, you'll want to select the Submit button at the bottom of your form. If you try to submit your application without completing one of the mandatory fields, you will receive a submission failed message that will direct you to the information in your application. You must then navigate to each section of the application and correct these errors. This may mean entering text into a field you missed, uploading a document to the correct field, or you may get an error 33. If you receive a submission 33 error, this means you've pressed the Enter button while adding your objectives into the Jura system. To resolve this error, you will need to go to the About the Project tab on your application, scroll down to the Objectives section, delete the extra line, click Save, and try again to submit. Sometimes these can be difficult to find, such as an extra line at the end of your objective entry. If you're having trouble locating the error, please email the RNS Help Desk and we'll be happy to help you solve this problem. Finally, you may receive an error message relating to your EDIA self-declaration. To resolve this error, click on the Applicant Home button, click on your personal profile, and then navigate to the Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Accessibility tab. You will need to complete the questions noted in your submission failure message. This may be regarding Indigenous identity, racialized minority group, disability, gender identity, language, or age cohort. As noted, you may choose to prefer not to save for any or all of these categories. Once completed and saved, you will need to return to your application and try to submit again. We strongly encourage you to submit your applications as early as possible to ensure that technical errors such as these do not prevent the submission of your application on time. So once the submission deadline has passed, the INRP review process starts with Research Nova Scotia's eligibility check. Research Nova Scotia staff will assess all applications to determine whether they are complete and meet the eligibility criteria. Applications that do not meet basic administrative eligibility criteria for the competition will be marked ineligible and not provided to the Scientific Merit Review Committee for consideration. Next, eligible applications will be reviewed by a Scientific Merit Review panel in keeping with RNS review guidelines. Finally, Research Nova Scotia will notify applicants of the results and implement the process for award acceptance for successful applicants. The following criteria will be used to assess international nursing research program applications. First, the committee will assess whether the PI has the appropriate productivity in consideration of their career stage and experience to undertake the suggested project. We will also evaluate the appropriateness of the PI's environment to enable the conduct and success of research projects. The alignment will be evaluated for relevance and value to nursing in Nova Scotia and the participating international country, clearly delineated achievement of one or more of the three identified Research Nova Scotia health missions, clear demonstration of how the work will align with one or more of the identified solutions from the Action for Health strategic plan. There must be clear evidence of engagement with the end users of the knowledge that will be created, and the application must demonstrate existing connection to the potential beneficiaries of the project's outcomes. Objectives must be appropriately cover all of the overall goals of the proposed project and can be reasonably achieved within the timeframe identified and provide an accurate overview of the activities described in the project description. There is appropriateness and adequacy of budget expenses and justification availability of in-kind contributions and other sources of funding as applicable, and adherence to the Research Nova Scotia eligible expenses policy. The plain language summary and project description will be evaluated to ensure that the plain language summary provided uses clear language suitable for a non-scientific audience. There is clarity and appropriateness of the methodology. Where applicable and appropriate, the research design is sex and gender equitable. There is clarity and feasibility of the project timeline and project activities. There is alignment of timeline and work plan with objectives. The extent to which potential challenges and limitations are identified and adequately are addressed. There is appropriateness of the knowledge dissemination plan and potential for findings to be used by other researchers and end users. The activities are well described and appropriate. There is appropriateness in how success will be identified and clarity of approach to determine success. From a team composition perspective, we'll ensure that there is clarity and appropriateness of team member roles and responsibilities, relevance and scope of expertise and experience of the PI and team members, including peer-reviewed publications, presentations, previous research awards, or grants. There is potential of team to successfully conduct the proposed research, and the team composition includes an appropriate and engaged co-primary applicant from the participating international country. The additional documentation will be reviewed to ensure that letters of support are provided for all partners, mentors, and project supporters, and that the letters were appropriate to confirm their support of project activities. These letters are from reputable individuals and organizations and are unanimous in their support of the applicant. Finally, the project will be evaluated on the overall merit in that there is significance of the proposed research and an expected contribution to understanding, interpreting, or creating knowledge that will impact healthcare equity and health system transformation in Nova Scotia. Hopefully this webinar has provided you with answers to most of your questions. However, I want to take a few final moments to address a few of the frequently asked questions. Am I able to submit multiple proposals as the primary applicant? No, applicants may only submit one proposal as the primary or co-primary applicant. Applicants may, however, act as a co-investigator on multiple proposals. Does a team member need to be affiliated with a post-secondary institution in order to be a co-investigator? No, a team member may be a co-investigator without a post-secondary institution affiliation. The affiliation is only required for primary applicants and co-primary applicants. I am unable to submit my application because of error 33. How do I fix the issue and submit my application? So as I mentioned, error 33 comes up when you have more than one objective listed in the text box provided, or when you hit the enter at the end of one of your objectives and send the cursor to the next line. So to fix that issue, you have to ensure that you only have one objective in each text box and that an additional line hasn't been started after each objective. And finally, who do I contact for help? If you require support with your application, please do not hesitate to reach out to the appropriate person listed here.